I have a copy of this on the computer. So I'll very briefly whiz through some North Yorkshire sport updates from my perspective and any CPD sort of opportunities that are upcoming or for you to consider that we may offer in the near future, just to keep tabs on what we're doing. The majority of you will be here this evening because you will have either received an invite through maybe your local SGO or through the newsletter I send out to your school, which is great. Keep an eye on that kind of stuff. I send lots of correspondence out through those channels, and it may be something that's of interest that can help and support you as I do so. We've then got the wonderful Bryn Llewellyn here from Move and Learn, and also Tactivate, two hats, but speaking to us about Move and Learn concepts in a session this afternoon, and then we'll leave us with an exciting opportunity to do some work with them as the academic year continues. And then I've got the equally amazing Will Huntington joining us on the call, and he will be talking about all things cross-curricular orienteering with us and sharing some great tips, ideas and resources. So there are lots to take away from this session. You'll have your opportunity to ask questions, fire questions their way, but I'm really keen that you are able to leave this afternoon into this evening thinking it was a worthwhile experience sitting on the call, having learned something new, and are able to take something away back to your school setting to apply or use or consider. So first and foremost, from my perspective, new updates nationally. There's not a lot much going on. First and foremost, we are anticipating a new school sport action plan. Autumn is the predicted timing of that. We are now in autumn as far as I'm concerned, but I've heard no further movement on what that will look like. All I do know from word on the grapevine is that there is going to be likely a big focus on the 60 minutes per day that we know about from the chief medical officer, of course, 30 minutes in school, 30 minutes out of school. And the DCMS have said that they are adding a greater focus to sport in the context of physical activity. Read into that what you will. And there's a little blurb at the bottom here in terms of what to potentially expect from that strategy. I envision that as and when I do hear something, and as soon as something comes out, I'll send out via the channels and the networks and airwaves and on the socials that you'll be aware of that. And it's just worth keeping an eye on to read through and see how that can inform any decisions that you're making in your setting going forwards. Now on to the other exciting stuff, PE and School Sport Premium. Of course, it was confirmed at the back end of last year. I love doing things reasonably last minute. But as far as we're concerned, and as I am currently concerned, there have been no obvious and notable changes. If you go and search up all documentation about the PE and School Sport Premium, even the dates haven't been updated. It still says July 2022. So they haven't even mentioned 2023. So in that sense, key indicators remain the same. What you can spend it on remains the same, and we're still under the impression that the DFE are going to monitor samples of the online reporting, so make sure that is on your website as well. And here's just a little breakdown of the sort of things that you will want to be publishing, but I know the schools are generally very good at making sure that we have got this data readily available and published on our websites. I still will always revert to using this template that you can get on the link on the screen, photograph that or take it as you wish. From AFP, it's a very straightforward document to fill out, but making sure you are doing it as an ongoing piece of work rather than scrambling around at the end of the year and filling it in retrospectively. It's much easier just to update as and when that we go forward. But it's a great bit of news, of course, that we have that still to support us to hopefully make informed, sustainable decisions. So just something to be mindful of and make sure we're doing. CPD opportunities and resources from my perspective, I'll whiz through a couple of these. Again, it's just a case of simply, I'm just have a little look on the chat here. I would still use the version that I just showed you there, Megan. That's the newest version that I've seen. I know somebody else has asked about that. That's the newest version of it as far as I'm concerned. If I've missed it and somebody else has seen a newer one, please flag that and raise it in the chat. I'm not the fountain of all knowledge, but that's the latest one. There isn't a newer version than that I am aware of, so I would stick with that one. Lovely. Okay. So opportunities, resources, and things to consider if you haven't yet, if you're new or for the first time, or maybe you've forgotten about things I've mentioned before. I'll flag a few which are ongoing. This one, we're looking again at running another cohort next year. We've just started, so we're a few weeks too late for this, our latest level 5 and 6 primary PE subject specialism course with 8 delegates from across the county. Wonderful course. I get the privilege of tutoring the course myself. So here at the hub in Harrogate, we cover all manner of units over 5 days. It's in person, it's theoretical, it's practical, it's fun, but it really gives a sound foundation for understanding how to lead the subjects of PE, from all the nitty-gritty of creating a curriculum for your school and assessment for learning, planning progression, health and safety. It really does set you up for moving forwards in your role in your school setting. So keep an eye again on those networks, those channels of communication for when the next cohort comes up. I'd love to have some of you on that with me if you haven't already done so with previous tutors here at North Yorkshire Sport. Yorkshire Humble Learning Community, I always draw your attention to this really simply because it's a free resource. You can jump on the Yorkshire and Humble Learning Community and access all manner of free modules to do with education, from physically active learning to outdoor learning to working with early years pupils, bite-sized videos, bite-sized learning for free, golden nuggets of information in there. If you haven't checked it out, it's worth just going over, having a look, and they're looking to be updating that more and more frequently going ahead in the coming months. So yhlearning.co.uk is well worth a visit of your time if you've got a little bit of time on your hands. And it is on that Yorkshire and Humble Learning Community where you can find the transition toolkit, which was, again, I'll revisit this because it was designed by Jodie as part of our team and Faye before she moved on. If you use that very bespoke URL you can see on the screen there, it's kind of a hidden module. And the reason I'm mentioning it now, even though children aren't moving on transition-wise from primaries to secondaries till next year, is there's some really great modules and pieces of work in there, which you might want to do with some of your children around some really important characteristics that they would need at various points in their life as lifelong learners and members, participants, if you will, of society. Understanding self, teamwork and communication, goal setting, problem solving, all worthwhile pursuits. And I think it's well worth your time. If you haven't, jump in on that link there. There are accompanying videos, accompanying resources and suggestions of activities you can do as part of that work. So whether you're working with year 6, year 5, year 4, year 3, I think there's probably something on there you can have a look at and play around with. And it is absolutely free to you as well. Last but not least, teacher of school swimming qualification. We've hosted this for the past couple of years and finished a cohort last year. There seemed to be a great appetite and demand for this. And this is for anybody who works in, with, or around schools and trying to put the ownership back on the school to help support and deliver a quality swimming curriculum offer. We know, of course, that can often be passed out to the local swimming centre and local swimming instructors, which can be at a cost. By doing this, you can qualify and upskill your own staff so they can actually deliver, and it takes a future cost away. So it's very sustainable over a number of years, and it's been incredibly popular. The last course we ran and finished in July this year, completely sold out. This course here, which has got 2 dates that you must attend, Tuesday the 18th and Friday the 21st of April at QM over by York, Queen Margaret's. There's 12 places in total. 9 of them have already gone through the airwaves and correspondence. So if you might be interested or know staff in your school who this would be beneficial for, there are 3 places left for these dates. And I know we're already 6 months out, but they were flying like hotcakes and can be a really beneficial course for yourself or other staff members in your school. So please check that out. The link is on the screen there. If you don't want to bother typing that whole link in, go over to northyorkshiresport.co.uk and you'll see under the courses there, the teacher of school swimming qualification starting next April, and see if you can dive on and get one of those last slots. Sophie's got a question for me here. School Life Academy Award. Let me write that down. I've got a little notepad in front of me, Sophie, and I'll just write that down. And what I will do is speak with Sarah from Swim England and see what her thoughts are and if that's something we can facilitate separately or maybe even around the same time as this. So watch this space. I've made a note of it and I will chase that up for you. Okay, last thing from me. This was sent on by one of our school games organisers in North Yorkshire, Fran Nicol. Works with the special schools at Mowbray, is her sort of hub school, and just a few bits of free CPD you can access to do with inclusive PE. Well worth checking out and having a look if you haven't yet, but she wanted me to share this with you on the call this evening in case you weren't aware of it. So there's an inclusive health check that you can have access to at the top here. The second one, which I think is definitely worthwhile, autism in the PE setting. It's a little e-learning course, again, free to access, well worth having a look at. And finally, there, just the top supportability bits and pieces at the bottom as well. There's a little code you could use, YSC Inclusion 32, but Fran was really keen that she shared that in the meeting and that you were aware of it if you haven't already been aware of it. So if you want to make a note of any of those, again, it's just something free to access to keep refreshing our toolkit of expertise and ideas. Okay, you've heard me talking enough. I'll be talking for too long if I don't stop myself. So it's at this point I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Mr. Bryn Llewellyn from Move and Learn. I will stop sharing my screen. I'll leave you in his more than capable hands. And when Bryn's finished his piece, talking to us and sharing his content with us this afternoon, we'll have a little bit of time for some questions, which you might want to throw in the chat or just unmute and ask, and we'll see where we go from there. So welcome, Mr. Bryn Llewellyn. It's a pleasure to have you. And I'm excited to see what you've got to share with us.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to share. Let's just see if I can come into the right. Let's go into there. If I go to, can you see that, Ryan?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Okay, cool. So greetings, North Yorkshire. I've not been to your neck of the woods for a while. I was looking through my timetable and calendar. The last time I was in your part of the world was working with Simon Smith School in East Whitby back in June. So that was a lovely trip out that way towards the coast. So I'm going to put some stuff into context in terms of Tagtivate and Move and Learn. So I might be preaching to the converted here in terms of some of the stats, but these are stats that you can share with your school leaders. Should mention, those of you who don't know me, a male in a primary school back in those days, you became the PE lead by default. And then the deputy head teacher, the acting head teacher, didn't like the acting head teacher too much, so went back to become a deputy head teacher. And now I do what I do through Tagtivate and Move and Learn. And why do I do that? Well, it's because of these health issues. So globally, at least 50% of kids are deemed insufficiently active. Okay, and in certain westernized countries, especially post-pandemic, we're looking at 80%. So 4 out of 5 children aren't sufficiently active. And then Dr. Vic Archbold at Leeds Beckett University has been doing a lot of research in terms of when does the decline start. So if there's any early years teachers out there or Key Stage 1, chances are you're doing all right in terms of your children are getting those 60 minutes of MVPA every single day. Age 7, something happens. That's when the trajectory starts to dip. And Vic's actually done some research recently, and that age 7 is shunting down a little bit into age 6. And it could be down to phonics screening in certain schools. It could be down to Key Stage 1 SATs in other schools. But I think that's when the children start to become addicted to their digital devices. So, question that I ask you, is this your vision of education? Yes, we all want high standards in terms of reading and writing and mathematics, but we've still got too many schools going down the route of a force-fed diet of English and maths only because they're the subjects that are tested. And you know, I know that our bodies are designed to move and learn, not to sit. So my question to you as humans, as parents, as teachers, as practitioners, is this your vision of education? So Ian and I set up Move and Learn based on active learning, and we looked in terms of what does active learning do? So here we've got some quotes from children. Child there is from Westerton Primary Academy in Leeds. With active learning, you don't get a chance to get bored. You don't get a chance to zone out. Or this, talk about transforming attitudes to learning. At the end of an active learning session, this kid came up to us, sweat dripping off his brow, big smile on his face. And he said, I used to think I was rubbish at maths, but now I know I'm not. And when we're co-delivering Move and Learn sessions, active learning sessions, quite often the teachers are saying things like, I never knew he could do that. Because we're taking the learning beyond the classroom and children are exhibiting things that they know that they might not necessarily show in a maths book or a maths lesson. And we've got some great pioneering school leaders who are recognizing in terms of closing the gap and looking in terms of the reluctant learners. This is a way to engage all children, even the most reluctant of learners. So we did a first round of research with Dr. Andy Daly-Smith, and I'm sure this slide deck can be shared by Ryan, so you can look at their the report that Andy Daly-Smith did there in terms of the impact, in terms of more time in MVPA land, less time sedentary time, and also the impact in terms of maths, fluency, accuracy in mathematics. So a little bit of things to celebrate recently. Working with the primary PE passport, the Tactivate planning documents are now all online with an app. So we can share that with you later on. Not that one though. And other things that we're working on at the moment in terms of Tactivate, looking in terms of like, how do you blend the digital with the analog? How do you look in terms of recording impact of different platforms? I'm not sure if you've come across Moki. If you've not looked at Moki yet, I suggest you have a look at it. The trackers are gorgeous in terms of they're not like an iWatch or whatever else, because there's no digital distractions for the children. There's no display there. So the idea is the children tracked from start of day to end of day, and we can see where the patterns lie. So mostly the children will be sitting down, sitting down, sitting down, a little spike for playtime in the morning, sitting down, a spike for lunchtime, then sitting down, and then you do an active learning session in the afternoon and the spike goes up there. So please have a look at Moki, well worthwhile. Another thing that we've been looking at in terms of blending the digital with the analog is in terms of Chatter. So not sure if you're aware of Chatter. Chatter are based in Hull and Humberside. They do cross over the boundaries into North Yorkshire, I'm sure, but the impact in terms of children looking at this platform and then activating the words that they talk about and then putting it into the writing is something very special indeed. I think it's one of those programs that you've got to see it to get it, but I'll certainly big up the team at Chatter there. What else have we been doing in the world of Tactivate? Again, we come back to that image at the start with the children sitting down in the barcode. A number of schools have gone down the same day intervention route. So rather than doing a lesson in English or spelling or reading or mathematics and then waiting until marking the book at the end of the day, a lot of schools are going down same day intervention. So we're identifying children who've not grasped the basics in the maths lesson, and then during playtime we're sort of like looking at those misconceptions and doing it via Tactivate and active learning sessions, either in the classroom, in the hall, or maybe outside. Does it work? Yeah, it works as well as it plays. The children are engaged. They're getting a chance to practice those misconceptions and like overcome them. What else have we learned in the world of Tactivate recently? Here we've got some children in terms of not play leaders, but move and learn champions. So we empower these children to take the learning beyond the classroom and then help younger children who may be struggling. And I think sometimes we forget that children are the most underused resource in school. We've got children here. These are children year 6 working with children years 1 and 2. And by training them up and then removing the scaffolding, they grow in confidence. You can see them walking taller. And not only that, there's an image there in terms of the playground markings. I'd said, can you blend with the tags with the playground markings? And they came up with these ideas. Bonkers beyond belief. But to be honest with you, they were creating far, far better approaches to moving and learning that I ever could do. One thing in the chat room that Ryan shared before was like something that you've been celebrating recently. So I mentioned the fact that I've been in North Yorkshire last term. No North Yorkshire schools this half term, but that said, we've now got schools on board in Argentina, Canada, and we've got a great project coming up in Greece as well, working with schools, but we've still got time to work with schools in North Yorkshire. So in amongst all this Tactivate stuff that's going on, Ian Holmes, former head teacher at Thorner Primary School in Leeds, and another character who you might know, Rich Ullman, he was the former PE lead at Malton Community Primary School. We were approached by Crown House to write a book about active learning. So we've looked at all of the research that's out there, not just Andy's initial research, but we looked at the international research from Reseland and all these people from across Europe and across into the States as well. We brought this this research and blended it with all these practical approaches that are out there. And it's doing really quite nicely. It's not like a bestseller like Chris Dyson's book, but it's slowly gaining traction. We're using the book in different ways. So we're currently working with the book as the basis for a training platform with 30 schools, 30 teachers in 20 schools in Bradford. And we're also working with a SCIT, an ITT provider in Bradford, working with 40 students there, using the book to help them take the learning beyond the classroom. So let's just come back to Ryan in terms of his 30 minutes target. So we know that we've got 30 minutes target at home, 30 minutes at school. So we've got this target of 60 minutes of MVP every day. What a lot of people don't know, including school leaders, is that it's not just one form of movement. We have to get a variety of moves. So any schools that have gone down the daily mile route, the daily mile will become the once in a while mile, the occasional mile, because it's like the same movements again and again and again. And if we're not too careful, it will turn certain children off active physical activity. The other third point is like we need desperately to look in terms of how do we reduce sedentary time. You know yourselves as teachers, when you're doing your planning online, if you're sitting down for too long, you're going to get your hunched shoulders, you're going to lose interest, etc., etc. So that's the third element. So this is a message that we need to get across. It's not 60 minutes MVPA, it's a varied type of movement and also reducing sedentary time. So Ian and I looked in terms of like, who are the early adopters for active learning? And we looked in terms of the research, but then we thought to ourselves, what about those people who see active learning as a gimmick? What about those people who see active learning as something that won't work? Well, we looked towards people like Tom Sherrington, and we looked at the people like Rosenshine, and we looked at those principles and thought, yeah, they're working in many, many schools, but can we not link those elements of Rosenshine and bring them into an active format? So we tested them out and they work as well as they play. So what we've got is like, we've got the energizers, which really help break up the sedentary time. It also allows children to refocus, and it breaks up complex learning into bite-sized chunks. The activators, that's where your process of learning really takes place. So we've dug deep into our pedagogical knowledge here, and we've looked in terms of, yes, we've got ways to retrieve knowledge, previous knowledge in active ways. We then think about creative ways to collect new knowledge, movement in the classroom and beyond the classroom, the corridors, the hall spaces, maybe outside. We've got to think as well in terms of how do we model the new knowledge and skills? And it's not the teacher that does the modeling. I've already referenced the fact that we've got great children out there. The children, to me, are the great models. They can model the new skills, the new knowledge, the understanding. And then it's about the connection. Because if I'm sat down there at a table and I'm sat next to Saul, all I can hear is Saul's ideas, and Saul can only hear my ideas. But if we're moving around the classroom, not running around the classroom, but moving with purpose, we can connect with others and gather their ideas. And then the beautiful element comes in where children create something new. So if you've got an SLT that are going on about Rosenshine and going on about, those pedagogical approaches, those pedagogical approaches can be used in a movement-based approach, not just a sitting down approach. So we're looking to change the culture and the ethos of schools. We're looking at different resources. Tagtivate is one of many. Cross-Curricular Orienteering is another. Now Press Play is another. There's lots and lots of resources out there that are paid for. But what we're trying to do is look in terms of like low cost, no cost resources out there. So we look at those different approaches using different resources and different environments. And as I say, it's not always outside. We can declutter the classroom and have purposeful movement within the classroom. We also need to think in terms of how do we bring about this change, and it's all to do with changing teachers' behaviours. Okay, we have to look at the capability, the motivation, and the opportunities that we get. So capabilities, do we know what physical activity is? Do we know what its benefits are? And can we incorporate that into the learning? We also need to think in terms of the opportunities. How do we provide physical and social opportunities for staff and children and the wider stakeholders? And we've got to think about this, the motivation. How do we get stakeholders' motivations to move and promote movement during learning? So these are all elements that are included in the book and the training. So we've got an offer coming on board, courtesy of Ryan. And this is the offer. We've got 3 sessions on offer, and we're talking about half-day offers. So session 1, we'd look at the approaches. Okay, you'd be able to see the move and learn approaches in action. And that will help us maybe look towards shifting the culture and the ethos of the school. So that movement isn't an add-on, but it's an add-in. So it becomes an integral part of the learning process. Session 2, we'll be looking at the approaches. So we're looking at the pedagogy. We're looking at ways that teachers can integrate them into their existing lessons. And we'll also be thinking in terms of the different environments. As I said, not always outside, but purposeful movement inside the classrooms. And again, looking at those resources, low cost, no cost. Session 3, we're going to be doing virtually. And I think this is crucial in terms of like that opportunity to reflect, to work on what's working well, what's not worked well, what barriers have we had to face, how have we overcome them? And we would do this via a teach meet style. Okay, we're definitely looking at a community of practice. So we're looking at small steps and a big difference. Ryan keeps on talking about the long-term trajectory. And I'm a massive fan of the podcasts that he's putting out there. I'm heading up to Newcastle as soon as this webinar is over, heading up to work with Biker Primary School. And I know I've got 2 podcasts lined up to listen to, but we've got an offer there, and we're gonna try to like work with 15, okay, a max of 15 teachers. There's a cost to it, but it's a low cost to the schools. And we're looking to work with you and play with you, experiment with you, help you on your journey, and move and learn together. Over to you, Ryan.
Wow. Lovely. No, thank you so much for that, Bryn. I really appreciate it. And I want to add to what you've just been explaining in terms of the move and learn opportunity, hopefully for some of you guys on the call, or if you're interested in schools across North Yorkshire. I think that the phrase I often use, Bryn, is the one from James Clear's Atomic Habits about you should be far more concerned with your current trajectory than you are with your current results. And it's about the path that you're currently on and where you're heading, and is it the right path? Is it where you want to be going? With the opportunity to add to that, on the back of today's call, if that's something that interests you, and I don't just mean you personally as well, because I think as Bryn alluded to there's an opportunity to work with 15 practitioners. And I believe the cost to a school is £300, but they can send 2, which works out like £150 per person, which is an absolute steal considering the budget that schools have still got, as we've already spoken about, with PE Premium. Now, off the back of this call today in the chat, I always put a little evaluation form, a type form link, and I will do that at the end of this call. It will be massively beneficial if that's something you think for yourself, or if you have got your thinking cap on of another member of staff in your school who you know has maybe mentioned this in the past. You want to be another champion of being physically active and moving in your school, and it can be another string in their bow, and they could come along with you. So you've got somebody at a different part of the school you work in to really drive this initiative forwards. It's well worth considering. And on that type form, when I send it out, there's the opportunity for you just to express interest. If you'd be interested in me contacting you to give you more details about when and where this might be and pursue it, or alternatively, you might just click, no, it's not for us. But if you are interested, I do need you to go onto that type form and say you're interested, so I'm not spamming things your way. But I think it's a really worthwhile thing to be looking at and to consider for you personally and for your school, and an incredibly exciting opportunity. it'd be worthwhile at this point to say, just opening the floor out to anybody on the call, if you've got any questions about that or any questions for Bryn in terms of what he's discussed and he's shared with us, and any thoughts.
Just like I say, Ryan, in terms of like many people will have heard of the Creating Active Schools framework, and Move and Learn is just that one element there in terms of how do you make that learning take place. Not necessarily sport and PE. It's not PE and sport. PE and sport is still separate. And some of the Creating Active Schools framework schools have gone down the line in terms of setting up key players and teams within schools. And as you say, it is that collaborative effect within schools, but between schools as well. And you're always full of one knowledge bomb after another. And we talked about the long-term trajectory, but I always harken back to your other one in terms of faster alone, further together. And I think that's the way that we can bring about genuine culture change, behavior change in school, by working collaboratively.
Yeah, I'd agree 1,000% with that. I've just seen in the chat, Sophie's posted a question, Bryn, just asked, the book, is it pedagogical, or does it also contain resources and practical ideas?
It's somebody from one of the Creating Active Schools backup, Dr. Anna Chalkley, talked about that blend of practice and research. And I think that's what it is. She calls herself a pracademic. Maybe that's the blend perfectly described. So it's about the pedagogy, but there's also practical elements. And the idea is that you work it through chapter by chapter, and it's about that small steps, big difference approach. It gives you a chance to reflect at the end of every chapter.
Just to add as well, Bryn, I believe as part of the interest in potentially doing the half days training and being one of those 15 practitioners or one of the schools, that they will be able to get a copy of the book, won't they, as part of that process?
Yeah, just don't tell the publishers.
We'll keep it on the down low. Super. Any other questions? If you want to throw them in the chat, feel free, or if you'd rather unmute, feel free to do so as well. I feel compelled to see how long I could hold that silence for.
Oh, almost Truss-esque there, wasn't it?
It almost was. Something like that. Lovely. Well, thank you so much again, Bryn, for that. We'll be follow up in terms of what that all looks like from myself. And like I said, in the type form at the end of the call there. Much appreciated. Bryn, whether you're hanging around or not, feel free to do so. If you're not, then that's understandable. You're a very, very busy individual. And we'll move on with the meeting.
Yeah, I'm heading up north now to Newcastle, but I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Will from Cross-Curricular Orienteering. Like me, a former PE lead, so he gets it. He understands everything that you're facing in terms of finance and curricular demands and everything else. He's a gorgeous, gorgeous man with a lovely product and platform. So enjoy.
No pressure, Bryn.
Cheers, Bryn. so we move swiftly on. We're making really good time, and as Bryn said there, we've got the pleasure of the young man Will Huntington to join us. And I think in a way, with what Will's going to be speaking about, will really dovetail in with what Bryn's just been talking about, and what in a sense is kind of the theme of this PE Lead Network meeting this afternoon into this evening. Will's going to talk a little bit about cross-curricular orienteering, share some ideas, insights, resources with you, and I hope you find interest in that. And again, please be armed with questions or thoughts that you might want to throw Will's way after he's finished speaking with you. So over to you, Will.
Sure, thanks very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I recognise a few names on the screen. I'm sure we've met in the past few years since cross-curricular orienteering started. So just a little bit about myself. Hopefully I can keep this to about 20 seconds. I started teaching in 2013, and like Bryn, I was the only male in the school at the time, and automatically I was made PE subject leader in my NQT year, which I didn't realise that was not allowed until a few years later, but it stood me in good stead. And taught year 3, year 4, year 5 and year 6 for a number of years, and super passionate about making learning active across the curriculum. At my high school, we had orienteering on the curriculum. Our head teacher was one of the best orienteers for his age in the under 60s category for British orienteering. So it's something that I sort of grew up with. and the two synthesized together. And basically cross-curricular orienteering is all about making learning active across the entire school day and linking in the other subject areas too. So hopefully throughout the call, you'll take away some good ideas that you can run, even if you're not already a cross-curricular orienteering school. And some of the resources which I'll share today, we will send through to Ryan at North Yorkshire Sport, and he can share that with you all, and you can have a go at doing some of the PE style activities along with some of the cross-curricular stuff as well. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. I'm going to have to go off the video to do that for some reason. I'm just going to stop that there and then share screen. And there we go. Okay, so first things first, I'll just explain exactly what cross-curricular orienteering is. We'll have a look at what schools get with it, and then we'll have a look at various resources, map types, how you can manipulate maps to suit different styles of orienteering and different age groups as well. So as you can see on the screen, it's all about giving schools the infrastructure to deliver regular orienteering activities through the OAA strand of the PE curriculum. But once that's been delivered, you can then use this as a vehicle to engage kids in maths, English, science, history, pretty much any subject area. Where does it take place? Well, firstly, it's in your PE sessions through the outdoor adventurous activities strand of the national curriculum. And there's schemes of work for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. And OAA is only statutory to deliver in Key Stage 2, but it's still great to deliver in Key Stage 1 as well. All your fundamental movement skills and competitive games can be intertwined throughout. Once those skills have been taught, it then moves on to your 30 active minutes a day, your physically active learning or your outdoor active learning with the core and foundation subject areas. And you've also got break time and leadership activities, which are provided, along with competitions, which you can run intra-school or inter-school if there's enough schools mapped in the area. And what we do as a company is we come in and map school sites, we set everything up, we deliver staff training, and we also run experience days with the children, whether it's getting the kids set off with the orienteering skills, or whether it's coming back after a year to run an official orienteering electronic timing day. There's different experience days that we can offer for you. And as a school, you'll always have access to the cross-curricular orienteering portal. And within here, you've got your different areas of the programme, different subject areas, different schemes of work for your PE, supported by your video lesson library. And then you've got your outdoor active curriculum lessons. Again, they're supported by videos. And then you've got your video support for establishing your break time and leadership activities, as well as the new competitions which come out each term. And we also offer staff training. We do that in person usually, but there are online options. We did put those out a couple of years ago when the COVID pandemic started. You've also got all your orienteering signs. We come into the school site and usually we'll set 25 of these signs up across the school. And these are split into year 3, 4, 5 and 6. Multiple different courses that they can do with that, from standard letters to find and record, number sequences, fitness challenges, and exercises to perform back at the start zone. You also get your pre-made content for your maths and your English. So you've got geometry courses, other maths courses looking at calculations, fractions, measurement, grammar, punctuation, spelling. And then you've got your blank boards, which you write on with a whiteboard marker and pen, link it to anything you want. Or you draw from our question banks, which are on the portal. So, for example, if you're looking at phases of the moon, you'd open the phases of the moon plans, and in here you'll have your questions or your content, which you download, print out, and then they go on the blank boards, which you can see in the background. Key Stage 1, same colours, but slightly different content. Phonics, pictures, vocab, grammar, punctuation, PSHE activities you can do along with the pictures, numbers, and then your fundamental movements. And you've also got your cross-curricular courses in Key Stage 1 with your maths. Everything's pictorial in year 1, and then moves on to numerals. And then you've got your shape, space and measurement, along with your grammar, punctuation and spelling activities too. And logistically, how does it look around the site? Well, you'll have 25 of your boards set up. There'll be a silicone weather resistant band wrapped around the board. And ultimately, you'll be able to use that location as a widget over and over again and slide in other questions and other content too. The only drawback to having a permanent course from an orienteering standpoint is the kids can get used to where those signs are located. And that's where the maps come in. And you'll have a variety of different map types which link to your permanent course, but also map types which you can manipulate and you can change where the control points are. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time looking at that in a few moments. And then the method behind this is very straightforward, really. There's 5 steps. The first step is just building the foundations, teaching those map reading skills, those orienteering skills in the relevant schemes of work. And then it moves on to your active learning, establishing your regular active learning sessions through cross-curricular orienteering. But then you've got break time activities, leadership activities and competitions. But there's so much in there, we recommend just establish one at a time. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll have a look at some lessons which I'm going to send through for you. So this is a basic Key Stage 1 lesson, and it's one of the prerequisites to actually looking at the Key Stage 1 maps. And it's all about teaching the kids what a legend and a key is, and they're working together as a team. Now you can see you've got your children in groups at equal distances around the pile of equipment. And what they have to do in their groups is build the sequence using the symbols shown underneath the legend and key. And they start simple, different rounds, and they get progressively more challenging through the lesson, different shapes and sizes, until even people are introduced into the sequence, which is always quite comical to begin with. They like to put themselves into the sequence before finishing it off. It then moves on to navigating to specific points. Once they've understood what a key and a legend is, you've then got different activities which you can run with a phonics twist. So here you can see the children will be given small map types, and what they have to do is find the cone shown by the triangle. And this is called navigating the square volcano. So you've got your different graphemes scribed on the cones, and what the kids have to do is use these maps to find the correct grapheme, come back and tell you what the phoneme is. And then it moves on to all your direction work, forwards, right, backwards, left. So you've got your grid of numbers set up either outside or on whiteboards in the hall or chalked out onto the yard, depending on the time of year. And the kids work in pairs, and they've got the different direction route cards to follow. One would be the navigator, while the other is the commander. So let's take this route 1, for example. You'd start on number 1 and then move forwards, right forwards, left forwards, and wherever they end up, let's say it was 20, that would then be their answer. And you can see you've got everything you need there, them off, and they can then move on to another route. And it just builds up progressively like that. They then start to look at the cardinal directions, northeast, southwest, and in Key Stage 2, they look at the 8 cardinal directions as well. Now, this is a classic orienteering style activities. If anyone's done the teaching orienteering certificate put on by British Orienteering, you might have seen something similar to this before. So here you've got your teacher diagram, and you would set these cones up ideally with 5 paces between each cone, but the more paces, the more physically demanding it's going to be. And what the kids do is they learn how to set a map using the blue cones as a reference point, and then they have to navigate from the triangle through the cones and adding up the numbers on the cones until they've got a total value, and all your answers and all your digits are in there too. And there's different levels of challenge here. You've got your easy course with all color coordinated, your medium course, and then your most challenging course as well. And then you then get stuck into your orienteering maps and the different styles of orienteering. So what we'll do is we'll bring up a school which we've mapped. So within the mapping folder, you would have your master PDF. And this is a map for just, first of all, getting used to the map reading element of orienteering. There's no control points on here, but you can do lots of activities like the Marauders map style activities in the lesson plans. All sorts you can do with the blank map. Getting used to folding the map, focusing on specific areas of the map, drawing and plotting points on the map, visiting specific features. There's all sorts you can do just with the blank map before you start to actually visit any of the permanent control points. You'll then have the red permanent course. So within here, you'll see this is in a Microsoft Word document. We create the maps using OCAD cartography. And then we make sure your map is then in here and your size and position will be at 100%. So it's perfectly to scale when you print it out. And you can see you've got all your control points across the school site with your start and your finish zone. So a permanent course is brilliant because it's easy to use once it's set up. The only drawback is the kids can get used to it after a number of goes. So there's ways around that. You can change the numbers on the map. So if we go back to this presentation here, instead of putting blue 25 over red 25, we could change the number. So let's say I'm going to change number 12 to 13, and we'd put 13 over 12 instead. But to take things one step further, we can open the drag and drop maps. So with your drag and drop maps, you're not using the permanent course. You're using the changeable signs, whether it's maths, English, science, history, whatever you're choosing for the lesson. And then you drag and drop your points onto the map to correspond with where you want to run the session. And it might be that you want to run a contained session, maybe just on the field area, or you might want to just focus on the building area too. So super easy to drag and drop and set up new courses. Equally, you may feel like you want to focus on one specific area of the school. So with it being in this format, you can crop the map. For Key Stage 1, you might just want to focus on the Key Stage 1 area and blow that up. And then you can drag and drop points just on to that specific area of the site that you want to work on. Okay. And then I spoke earlier about the styles of orienteering. Sometimes the danger of orienteering can be we set the kids off and they don't come back until the end. I think the word jolly comes to mind. I've seen in a few schools, teachers send the kids off and go and almost get a brew in the staff room while they're completing the course. And that's not what we want to promote. We want to be promoting regular feedback and choosing the correct style of orienteering based on what you are delivering in school. So we'll start with STAR orienteering to begin with. And we'll go with Key Stage 1. And you can see here with the Key Stage 1 maps, there's only one control point on the map. And they've got to navigate to a point and then return back to the start zone. Then they would swap maps with another team. And you can see here that the control point on the next map is different. And then they would navigate to that point and return back to the start zone. So start, they go to a point, they come back. They go to another point, they come back. Key stage 1, you'll only have 1 point on the map. Key stage 2, you'll have all the points on the map. Okay, so that is the most basic form. It starts with start orienteering in the PE scheme, but then from a cross-curricular standpoint, if you want to deliver cross-curricular lessons using your school grounds and using your maps, then start orienteering is great for that consistent and regular feedback. The next style will be score. And that's where the children set off and they don't come back until they've found and answered all the questions or until the time limit is up. And usually what you'll see in the cross-curricular lessons is you'll start with star, they'll go to a point, come back, go to a point, come back until they're familiar with the activity that they're focusing on. And then you can progress them on to the score style. And then you've got the most advanced style of orienteering, and that is linear. And that's where they've got to follow a set route on the map. So with this activity, you could run 3 different events in a PE session, and they navigate from the start, and they've got to follow a set route on the map. Usually linear is done individually. And there's a staggered start. Now, in usual orienteering competitions outside of school, you'd be starting every minute. However, that's not very practical in a PE lesson because you've got 30 children. You can't wait 30 minutes between the first and the last competitor. So split the class into maybe groups of 7 or 8, and they go every 30 seconds. And you can have mini competitions going on throughout the lesson. You can see this linear event 2. It's a different linear course, looking at control points 9 to 16. And then you also have the third linear event. And I've left this one blank on purpose. And that's because you can actually decide the routes just by going to insert shape and then selecting the freeform tool. And then you can decide the route that the children need to follow. So it's super versatile having these maps. However, if you do not have the budget to get an orienteering map created, then there's no reason why you cannot use a screenshot of Google Earth. Ryan, can you still see my screen?
I can, yes.
Fantastic. So you could quite easily take a screenshot of your school, and then you could pop that into the map instead, and then crop it. And then blow it up for your site as well. Purple, not the best colour to use if you're using Google Earth. Red or a yellow is actually better, and it'll show up on the dark colours. We have Steve and Jeff here today. Don't think we do. I thought Stephen might be on the call. He might have recognised his skill there. Okay. So What we are going to share with you today is some of the Key Stage 1 PE lessons. We're also going to share with you the Count the Cones style Key Stage 2 PE lessons. And then we'll share with you an active maths lesson, looking at some of the weekly maths, which is in line with White Rose. And within here, you've got your cutouts, which form your control points and your control signs. So you print these off, slice down the middle, slice through the centre, and then they go out in the grounds on either the orienteering boards we provide. If you don't have those, pop them on a whiteboard and they can go out in the grounds that way instead. And the kids have to navigate through the course. The first 25 questions are all fluency based. And as they're navigating through the course, they have their worked examples within here too. So they'd have the maps and the worked examples. If they get stuck at a question, they can refer back to that worked example before returning to the teacher for further support. And then you've got your problems and your reasoning element of the course too, and that is to be done when they've finished the first 25 control points. So we'll share that with you, and we'll also share some science with you too. I'll send through a plants lesson looking at identifying seeds and bulbs, and this uses the questions lead to answers style of orienteering. So with this, you would set up your questions 1 to 12 on one side of the school, and the answers control points 13 to 24 on the other side. And the pupils are faced with a question: does garlic come from a bulb or a seed? Go to control point 13 to find the answer. And hopefully you would have some garlic actually placed down in that location, so they could see that it actually comes from a bulb. And obviously you'll have all your recording sheets, step for depth challenges and vocab too. We'll also share a Key Stage 2 science-based lesson, and we'll also share some history and some geography too. And we'll also share some PSHE activities in the pack as well with Ryan. So that is pretty much cross-curricular orienteering as quickly as I could have done it. The best thing I think now is just to hand over to everybody else, and I can take any questions or any feedback from schools who've been using the resource, and we can go from there.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for that, Will. I appreciate it. If you stop sharing your screen, I'll put mine back on. And then whilst people are on the call, if you've got any questions pop into your head now with regards to cross-curricular orienteering, pop it in the chat, or feel free to unmute in a moment to ask Will while he's here about the resource, about its uses. Will's been very generous there in saying he will send across to me some of these activities so I can share them with you after this call. So later this week, you'll receive an email off the back of this to contain some of those bits and pieces. But as I'm about to share my screen again, if you've got any questions, unmute to ask Will or pop it in the chat.
One thing I'd just like to say, Ryan, is with the resources we send through, how our program works is it's very much skill-based. You teach the skills involved with the orienteering in your outdoor adventurous activities, and that unlocks everything else that comes with it. So there's a process, and if you've not delivered the PE skills and spent that time delivering it, then you won't be able to really get onto all the cross-curricular aspect of it, because they won't know how to use the maps to find all the questions and the content and the information around the site. So that is sort of the glue that holds everything else together, teaching the skills first of all, and then progressing on to all the cross-curricular stuff. But there's no harm in having a go before you know, taking out any form of package with us.
Yeah, really, really good point. So do we have anybody on call who wants to run anything by Will, ask him anything while he's here with us?
Oh, I can see Stephen is here. Sorry, Stephen.
Yes, and he did talk about in the chat, and one of his schools, wasn't it, and that he does recommend this cross-curricular orienteering, and he does use it. I mean, there's so much use there for PE leads, class teachers across school, and I think linking into what Bryn was saying earlier as well, with regards to those active minutes and using it in such a way to promote to teachers across school who may be more reluctant and not sure how to go about approaching different ways of learning. I think, as you just shared with us, there is such depth there, Will. So much scope for how this can be used for and be used sustainably as well going forward. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, and that's reiterated by Stephen there, who said it's awesome. I know that I've been in conversations with yourself as well, Will, and this is a kind of a watch this space at this point, but for looking ahead maybe into the new year, at the potential of running some form of training or session for a day where we'll get together with the resource. And again, that's something which will be shared on the airways and the networks through the newsletters and socials, if and when myself and Will manage to get that fully nailed in.
Yeah, sure. I'm still on the case of contacting the outdoor centres.
Not a problem at all. Good. So we'll be in touch with that. Doesn't look like there's any questions coming in the chat. I think people will be digesting the information that you shared. There's an awful lot to take on board. If you do think of a question in the next few minutes or so, feel free to pop it in the chat. If you've got other bits and pieces to be doing, Will, you're free to leave. You're a very busy chap. All I have to say is massive thank you for jumping on and giving up some of your time. I really do appreciate it. I'm always one for sharing and celebrating some of the highest quality things out there with the other schools in North Yorkshire. I think the work you're doing is fantastic. And as has just been echoed there by Stephen, it's really worthwhile looking into as an investment and another string to the bow of what you offer as a school. So appreciate your time, Will, and thanks for jumping on.
Sure, it's a pleasure, and thank you very much for having me.
Lovely. So we've had our two speakers, and we're in good time at the moment here. Oh, perfect. Thanks for that, Bryn. You put the link into the book as well. It's sort of bringing us towards the wind down of our session, which is good because these 2 hour sessions, I've been umming and ahhing over the past few that we've run. It's at the end of the day. It's a difficult slot and a difficult time. So I appreciate you all who are on the call here with us towards the end. I want to share just a couple but more points from my point of view. First one is a save the date. I'm usually not as organized as this, but I already am this organized. So here you can see the date for our spring PE Lead Network meeting. We've put the timings on Tuesday, 21st of February. So make a note in your diary for that as we start to compile what that agenda may well look like in terms of course, the updates and the opportunities. But this is another reason why the feedback form is so vital at the end of these calls for me, as I can gauge a bit of information and insight as to how the next meeting will look and how it will shape up. I can sense what there is a need for. I can sense what other things we maybe would like to hear about, and I'll try my best to get them compiled into the meeting so it best suits the need. So the more voice I can hear from all of you on the call, the better aligned these meetings will be to your need and what we want to see here in North Yorkshire. So that's the next date. You can see the link. Of course, you could photograph it, but you could also visit the website. If you go onto the events and courses and go ahead, you'll see it there. I'll also put the link in the follow-up email I send off the back of this call later this week, which will take you to links to the recording of this meeting if you want to watch some of it back, and some of the resources that Will has going to be so kindly sharing with us as well. So all that's left for me to say is a big thank you for jumping on this evening, taking us to just shy of 5 o'clock. I hope that you found some bits and pieces in there useful and insightful that you can take away, act upon yourself, share with other members of staff. I know that I certainly have. If you need anything at all with regards to PE, physical activity, school sport across North Yorkshire that I can be of assistance with, please do email me, ryan@northyorkshiresport.co.uk, and I'll endeavour to do my absolute best to support you in any way, shape or form that I can. What I'm going to do right now before you do go anywhere, and I think it'll be great since we are finishing early and I've given you nearly 40 minutes back, 30 minutes or so of your time, is I've just put in the chat there a link to the type form feedback for this session. If you could so kindly go on to that to leave feedback, but not only that, to tell me if you're interested in the opportunity that Bryn has mentioned with Move and Learn, and if you'd be keen to get on board with that training, because then it will give me that alert so I know to contact you and let you know when these spaces are available, where the training might be, and we can move forward. So it's really important you go onto that type form to tell me if you're interested in the move and learn training for yourself and maybe another member of staff, so I can get in touch with you in due course for that, which will hopefully be happening in the new year. That's all from me. I appreciate your time. If you want to hang around to have a natter with me, ask me any questions, feel free to do so. Other than that, jump on the type form, give me your feedback, and I look forward to catching up and speaking with you at a later date. Thanks, everybody.